The nicer you are to others, the meaner you are to yourself. Sound familiar? There's a reason for that. And once you see it, everything clicks into place. Here's what happens. When people pleasing doesn't work, when you're still not getting the appreciation and love you're desperately trying to earn, the inevitable next emotion is anger. It's logical. We get angry because we did all the right things. We were nice, we followed the people pleasing rules, and yet we still don't get the appreciation. Of course, we're angry. But here's the problem, nice people aren't supposed to be angry. Anger doesn't fit with our carefully constructed identity of the good one. Therefore, all that anger gets redirected towards the only person we are ever allowed to be mean to, ourselves. And here's where the resentment spiral that Dr. Aziz talks about starts, and it's made up of 3 steps. Step 1. You start seeing others as the problem. Here's the cruel psychology of people pleasing. The nicer you try to be, the more resentment you actually carry. For me, the more I tried to please others, the more I constantly worried about their opinions. And the more I filtered myself and altered myself to fit in. And so, the more afraid I became of their rejection and of their judgment. Therefore, I started projecting my own harsh inner critic onto everyone around me, assuming that they were judging me as harshly as I thought that they were. So I ended up simultaneously trying to please people while becoming afraid of them and angry at them for not giving the validation I was working so hard to earn. I started thinking, I don't feel good enough because he's always critical. But every time she's in the room, I feel sick to my stomach. There's just something about her. Step 2. The unfairness story takes hold. Now I was angry and afraid of them, but here's the twisted part. I still care desperately about their opinions because I'm a people pleaser. Therefore, I believe that these jerks had power over me. Jerks whose opinions somehow mattered more than my feelings and needs. My internal narrative became, it's unfair. I work hard and I'm nice, but they're assholes. The thought pattern crystallized into blameless me being nice and these assholes being jerks with all the power over me. This is unfair. This is cruel. That is textbook resentment. And finally, step 3. All that anger gets turned inward. And this is the cruelest part. Or since I never allowed myself to express any anger towards anyone, because that wouldn't be nice, all that anger got directed towards the only person I was allowed to be me. Myself. I became my own harshest critic, my own worst enemy. The voice in my head became meaner than anyone else ever could be. This is why us people pleasers often struggle with vicious self-criticism and feelings of never being critical. All the anger we can't express towards others gets misdirected and turned to self-attack. Let me give you an example. I used to have a colleague who always insisted I joined him for drinks after work. I remember being exhausted. I just wanted to go home, but I was terrified of looking rude or not being a team player. So, I never said no. Instead, I found excuses to leave early. Even found last-minute jobs to stay late. Anything to avoid the drinks without actually saying the word no. I never got angry at him directly. I couldn't. That wouldn't be nice. But I secretly was. I was angry at him. I was angry at the situation for being uncomfortable. And most importantly, I was angry at myself for not being able to just say no. I started criticizing myself. Why are you so weak? Why can't you just say no like a normal person? The anger I couldn't express towards them became a weapon I used against myself. When I read the book titled Not Nice, I realized that in trying to avoid negative emotions like conflict and disappointment, I trapped myself in far worse negative emotions. Chronic anxiety, seething resentment, and vicious cycle of self-hate. Thankfully, that same book had the solution. And it was not to become me or stop caring about others. It was to recognize that this emotional hell was the direct result of making others' opinions more important than my own well-being. And the way out was simple. When I started to see the connection between my people-pleasing behaviors and my emotional suffering, I started making different choices. I Learn to tolerate the temporary discomfort of someone's potential disappointment in me instead of signing up for misery and anxiety and self-directed resentment. Because our emotional freedom starts the moment we realize that other people's reactions are not our responsibility, and that trying to make them our responsibility is exactly what's been making us miserable all along. The price of being nice is too high. Our mental health, our authenticity, our inner peace. Here's what I want you to try. This is the journaling prompt that helped me the most in overcoming this specific issue. Try it for yourself. List the last 10 times you said yes to something. Favors, requests, invitations, commitments, whatever. For each one, ask, did I actually want to do this? Or was I afraid of what would happen if I say no? Now ask again. How do I feel towards the person who asked me? And how do I feel towards myself for saying yes? Count how many of your yeses were actual yeses and how many were obligations towards others. What does that ratio tell you about how you're living your life? The resentment you're carrying isn't the character flaw. It's a symptom, a sign that you've been trying to earn love through performance instead of receiving it through authenticity. Other people's reactions are not your issue. The moment you start believing that, your resentment starts to dissolve. If this hit home, let me know in the comments and subscribe for more breaking free from people-pleasing patterns. Thank you for watching.